In a world where the sense of names and definitions are shifting as the ground beneath our feet, the notion of identity can become quite elusive. Consider my case. My name is Nastia, in the intimate confines of home, Anastasia, resonating in the English air, Anastasia, inscribed in the official documents, or that Ukrainian girl in a new class. But despite these varied, ever-changing labels, the essence they hold remains unwavering, akin to the features of my physical body, whether viewed by my father, border official, or my English teacher. They perceive me through a particular set of lenses, which are singular, because I carry the particular set of values everywhere with me that define me as a human or an individual. It is pretty apparent to tell who I am and to point out on Anastasia when someone asks you, which is quite convenient and easy to determine my borders, to determine who I am. But the continent, which is known by nearly the same name as Europa in Ukrainian or Europa in German, unlike myself, presents a unique challenge in identifying its identity. So, let's look at the pure geography first. European metaphorical eyes, arms, and legs. Let's see. It should be pretty straightforward to identify where does Europe ends. So let's see. Is it easy to say whether Russia is in Europe or Asia? Some argue it's both, some argue it's neither, and it's completely fine. And let's look into another country, Georgia. I asked the best experts in the world of artificial intelligence, like ChatGPT, BART, Perplexity, and a bunch of others, about whether Georgia can be considered in Europe geographically. And unfortunately, I had only one reply. The classification of Georgia as a part of Europe can vary upon the perspective. And, you know, it's perfectly okay. But let's talk about the biggest country in Europe. I mean, depending on what your answer was to the Russia question was, of course. And let's look into one of the geographical centers of Europe. Yes, we didn't manage to agree on this one too. And it is Ukraine. But the paradox arises. If you ask me whether or not I identify myself as European or not, I would say that I'm Ukrainian. And not only me. Nearly a half of Ukrainians didn't feel like Europeans in 2023. And the figure was even bigger before. In 2005, it was more than 60% of Ukrainians that didn't identify themselves as Europeans. But isn't it pretty weird for a country that is located right in the center of the continent? So maybe it's because we didn't join the European Union yet. But it's also not the best approach to take. Let's look at Switzerland, for example. Geographically, it's located right in the heart of Europe, and it undeniably has lots of cultural and historical ties with Europe itself. However, it's not a part of the European Union, but decided to remain neutral. And even the most astonishing fact is that only 6.5% of young Swiss population in the perspective want to join the European Union. And when we see that nearly 80% of the Georgian population of the country wants to join the Union, I don't know what to think. So it means that the country doesn't need to be in the European Union to be considered European, isn't it? But as stated by the European Commission in 1991, to be eligible, vice versa, to join the European Union, you need to be a European state. So what does it mean to be a European state? You can say maybe it can depend on the culture, but I wouldn't agree on this. Even if you look in the countries that are considered truly European, the ones that people intuitively imagine when the topic about Europe arises, for instance, Germany, France, or Spain, they all have different mentality, different language, different traditions. And it's perfectly fine, but it doesn't help us to identify where does Europe end. Okay, so maybe it's about values, right? And as the Treaty of the European Union said, to be eligible to join the European Union, you need to respect some values identified in the Article 49. And those values include human rights, peace, dignity, and etc. The thing is that those values are really broad, don't you agree? For example, by this criteria, Australians can call themselves Europeans. So because their non-European constitution repeats the same core fundamental values. And they even joined the Eurovision contest, wouldn't you believe? But you simply cannot decide to define yourself a European. Or can you? The problem is that Europe doesn't have a monopoly on the values that Ode to Joy calls upon, and it possesses a unique challenge. Okay, so if values as well do not work, maybe we can look into the history. So the ancient Greece, the Roman Empire, all of them, and Byzantium, all of them nurtured the concept of Europe as a separate from the whole matter. And ancient Greeks started to define Europe as a separate from the Eurasia continent even before geographers started to argue whether there are 6 continents or 7. For example, look at this map. They identified only 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Libya. To Libya, they referred as to the Northern Africa in a nutshell. And where the Europe as a name comes from? There are different variations. However, if we translate from Greek, Euros means wide and open, and ops means face or an eye. So it opens the room for wide-gazing interpretations. Even ancient Greeks didn't know where does Europe ends. So after World War II, the idea of rescue was reintroduced in creating and reintroducing Europe as a whole. And it symbolizes the collaboration and unity among the nations. That's how the European flag was created. And as Tim Marshall discussed in his works, and as we probably all know, the stars represent the member states, and the deep blue results from solid red, could you imagine, green for Islam, light blue for the United Nations, white for surrender, and black for mourning. And it brings me to another aspect. Maybe here we can find the unity among the continent. Religion. However, what you would think about Christianity that brings it all together, considering the different denominations of it, including Catholicism, Protestantism, and Eastern Orthodoxy, they all act as a larger pieces of mosaic rather than a whole picture. And we don't even consider the other growing presence of other religions, such as Buddhism, Hinduism, and we just cannot simply define Europe by its religion. So, how can we do it? The thing is that as well, shared flag brings other complexities. And as Charles de Gaulle said, how can you govern a country with 246 different types of cheese? And it relates to the topic because the member states constantly debate the extent of their connection to the European flag. And they're afraid to lose authenticity in this globalized or McDonaldized world. And it's really important to recognize that we even interpret the flag differently. In Bosnia, for example, they could see it as someone could see it as a sign of hope and prosperity. Germany and France as a glue that holds them all together. Or Greece as economic disagreements and political within it. Or Ukraine, like something that we are fighting for. The European identity crisis is a rising issue. And the European Union also recognizes this, that it's not only about the legal boundaries or frames that we put into, but it's about the essence of belonging. That's why they introduced the Erasmus Plus Youth Exchanges programs, to actually try and to craft and to create this European identity and European citizens, which is perfectly alright. So I want to ask you a question. Do you belong here? Can you call yourself a proud European? Overall, we are still the Europe and we are still on a journey of defining its identity. And to think about it, when you envision Anastasia, do you all envision the same Anastasia in front of you? Whether you ask my father, the border official, my English teacher, they probably would see me differently because they met me in a different context, ages, perhaps in a different mood. And therefore, it was kind of a lie what I said to you in the beginning, that we can easily define who we are as humans or individuals. And that's okay. The same with Europe, the same with every society, and the same with every idea. So, if someone asks you, where does Europe end? Remember that the answer is a beautiful, ever-changing story as one shaped by our diverse identities. Thank you.